I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Okay, can you do roll call, please?
Of course. Joseph Britton.
Joe said he will be late.
Okay. Rachel Chalesky.
Here.
Kate Canetta here. Gladys Cooper.
Here.
Lauren Daly.
Here.
Joe De Silva.
Present.
Catherine Hodgson.
Here.
Rich Janelli.
Here.
Kathy Molinaro.
Here.
Al Russo.
Here.
Amy Spallina.
Here.
10 present, 1 coming.
Okay, thank you all. Dr. Sayre, do we have any recognition tonight?
Welcome, everybody. I'm recognizing everyone for being present.
Okay.
That's about all I got.
Okay.
Other than Joe.
Okay, Kate, will you do the public participation information, please?
Of course. Due to the unique nature of the COVID-19 crisis and the limitations of technology, members of the public who are Danbury residents are invited to send brief comments and questions via email in advance to dps_public_boe@danbury.k12.ct.us.
Thank you. Sandy, do you want to do the 2 comments that you have?
Sure. First one is from Demisha Moore. I have a few concerns regarding the school system and Mr. Hanna. How do you intend to handle the threats that Mr. Joe Hanna made? Threats of bullying and threats made to families. What is your stance on bullying? During the principal's breakfast, Mr. Donovan said that he was aware of the behavior of Mr. Hanna before the newspaper article. When did you all become aware of Mr. Hanna's actions? Why was this information withheld from students and their families? Were you aware of prior misconduct at past employers of Mr. Hanna? I am looking for accountability here. Who is responsible for hiring Mr. Hanna? We, the people, deserve to hear publicly who this is, and does he or she or them share the same views as Mr. Hanna? Will there be training to directly address these issues? Why was Mr. Hanna given the option of resigning? Moving forward, what is the plan to prevent the hiring of such individuals? Why are we not addressing the racial tension that is obvious in the school system with teachers? The next one is from Donna Bosworth. I am writing to the board to ask what mitigating strategies and resultant tests have been conducted within our buildings in preparation for any potential partial or full return of our staff and students. The following guidelines come from the CDC. Evaluate the building and its mechanical and life safety systems to determine if the building is ready for occupancy, such as hazards associated with prolonged facility shutdowns, such as mold growth or issues with stagnant water systems, and take appropriate remedial actions. Ensure that ventilation systems in your facility operate properly. There have been concerning reports of Legionnaire's disease across schools throughout the country. Consider taking steps to improve ventilation in the building in consultation with an HVAC professional based on local environmental conditions and ongoing community transmission in the area. Increase the percentage of outdoor air, potentially as high as 100%. Improve central air filtration, increase air filtration to as high as possible without significantly diminishing design airflow. The test of each system should show CO2 levels below 800 ppm. Consider using portable high-efficiency particulate air (HEPA) fan filtration systems to help enhance air cleaning, especially in higher risk areas. Ensure exhaust fans in restroom facilities are functional and operating at full capacity when the building is occupied. Consider using ultraviolet germicidal radiation as a supplemental technique to inactivate potential airborne virus in the upper room air of common occupied spaces in accordance with industry guidelines. Most of our buildings are old and don't have this infrastructure set up. Has the CARES money been allocated to remediate these issues? We can't simply change filters and hope that it is enough to protect our staff and our children, especially as we see the rates of cases in the young rising at an alarming rate. The CDC guidelines also specifically note that plans should include all employees in plans. For example, management staff, utility employees, relief employees, janitorial staff, and maintenance staff. I feel that this mandate has not been followed in regards to these issues or the many other encompassed in the reopening plan. There has been an absence of teacher voice in our reopening plans, which I hope that the board seeks to rectify as we embark on the challenges that this new school year presents. And I am just hitting refresh on our emails. And that is it for public participation tonight.
Thank you so very much, Sandy. Kate, will you do the consent calendar, please?
Of course. I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar, Exhibits 20-82 through Exhibit 20-90 as recommended.
Motion made by Kate. Could I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Are there any discussion on the consent calendar?
Yes, I have
Yes, Rick.
a comment.
Yes.
I just want to thank Sandy first for the very detailed recording of the minutes and the many minutes that are in our packet this evening. I would like to point out that in the June 24th meeting minutes, that it's not recognized who and how members voted, as in with our other minutes. If passed unanimously, it should state it was unanimous. And if there was one abstention, it should state who that was made by.
Right.
Can that be corrected
Okay.
for next time?
Okay. Any other question concerning the meeting? We will have those corrections hopefully at our next meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor? Could I hear? I'm sorry. I'm used to the old way. Kate, roll call.
Roll call. Joe Britton is not here. Rachel Chalesky.
Aye.
Kate Canetta. Aye. Gladys Cooper.
Aye.
Lauren Daly.
Aye.
Joe De Silva.
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro.
Aye.
Al Russo.
Aye.
Amy Spallino.
Aye.
That's 10 votes for aye. Unanimous.
Thank you all. The motion so carried. Do we have anyone from the employees group here? No? Any of our students here?
Ms. Cooper, I'm here.
Yes. Yes, okay.
How are you? Good
I'm
evening.
doing fine. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to see all of
Good,
you. Sorry, I was a little delayed getting on.
No problem.
Those Zoom waiting rooms. Anyway, how are you, everybody?
We're doing fine. How are you?
Very good, very good. Jumping from meeting to meeting. I just wanted to take 2 minutes of your time to speak about the efforts that your teaching staff has been putting in, not just the past 2 days of opening, but the 2 weeks prior to that, with the new learning, the knowledge that we've all been working hard to acquire and implement. And just to let you know that our teachers are tasked with, as you know, a ridiculous amount of workload on their shoulders right now. And to please be cognizant, understanding, gentle, because one of the things that is happening throughout the community as our teachers are getting the comments and the directives from parents when things are not going so great with technology. So as things are breaking down and we're working out all the tweaks with our technology issues throughout the district, and some of them are not even district issues, they're Google issues with our Google Classrooms. you know who gets all the emails and the texts and the communication are the teachers. And oftentimes the teachers are getting the direct blame for those issues that are well beyond our control. Especially as somebody who is, not a tech troubleshooter, but someone who considers themselves very tech savvy. I've had colleagues speak to me about parents already on day 2, sending, very angry communications to teachers. So I just wanted to put it out there for, the board record to let our community know and to let our board know that, teachers are working an incredible amount to make sure our parents are up and connected. But there are some things that are beyond our control that, need to be addressed within the administrative realm and not the teacher realm, and perhaps within the Google realm. And I just wanted to go on the record to commend the teacher effort and commend the amount of collaboration that has taken place in the past few weeks just to get up and running, and just to say how incredibly proud we are of our teachers and the efforts that they put forth to make sure our students are getting the best education we can. So I just wanted to say kudos to them, and I hope everyone has a great year. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for your leadership and fully support those comments that you have just brought forth to us. And we know that everyone is working hard, and we know that everything is not going to fall in line just because you said today is Monday or whatever the day. Sometimes it takes time, but we thank everyone for all their efforts that they're doing to make sure that the students receive what they are looking for or need in school. But thank you again, Erin.
Thanks, Ms. Cooper.
We're doing the presentation on the facilities update.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. During our last special meeting, we didn't get to this part. And I've asked Rich, Jalbert, and Courtney to update the board of all of the happenings that have been going on this summer. If you would include conversation about, I know Kelly is here, about Granville, to update him as well, that would be helpful. So Courtney, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Sell. Hi, everybody. It's really good to see you all at our regular board meetings. So we were going to do this a few weeks ago, and now we're in a little bit different of a space. So I just wanted to let you know first, before I go through building reentry plans for hopefully in October, if our students are back in person learning, where we are today. Right now, the buildings are open, the administrative staff is in, and teachers are invited in if they choose to work remotely from their classrooms. The custodial staff is in, our safety advocates are there, and we're running our food service distribution from all of our elementary schools right now for the remote learners that are in need of a meal. We just got approval from the state to continue running a waiver for our summer seamless program, which gives us a great deal of flexibility in that any kid can show up. They don't even need to be a Danbury student. It just needs to be a meal for a child, and a family member can pick it up on their behalf. So we have some flexibility. So if you could let all of your people know out in the community that you speak with, that there's a lot of flexibility around that. They just have to show up and let us know how many meals they want. We're doing it Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. to be able to give a little bit of time for people to get into their learning for the day. And so we've heard so far that that's going decently well. So we wanted to tell you sort of what our planning process was, just very broadly speaking. Kevin, Assistant Superintendent Kevin Walston, myself, the Health Services Coordinator Kathy O'Dowd, and Rich Jalbert, as well as Richie Torres, set up sort of building templates that included every aspect that the individual principal leadership needed to address. We can't be in all 18 buildings, and we know our principals are the experts in their individual buildings. So we thought through every piece of guidance that we had from either the CDC or the American Institute of Architects. The parent that just emailed in some comments quoted all of the requirements that we're supposed to be following for guidance for the buildings. And I'm going to address that as I go through. That's one of the AIA, American Institute of Architects, guidance that we did follow to ensure that our HVAC systems were up to standard and running, as well as testing the water quality in the buildings. So we developed a template for all of the principals to touch on each of the points. So arrival and departure, egress in the hallways, classroom setup, cafeteria and meal distribution, and then every other common area. We thought through every aspect of when a kid gets on the bus to come to school to when a student leaves the bus, or their family driving them, or they're walking. So from arrival to the building to going into their classroom. Dr. Sal engaged a consultant to work with us to advise about signage and flow protocol based on the size of the hallway, for example, and the particular setup of the building, whether we could do one way where it was practical, or if we had to maintain two-way. We also purchased signage that would encourage that distancing of 6 feet in the single lines, and set up all of that in the buildings. Now, if someone went to look at this in mid-August, I think it was actually early August. I know the date because it was the date of the mini hurricane that happened August 4th. Actually on the 5th, Rich, myself, and Kevin were in the buildings with flashlights because we wanted to get everything ready. But if you looked on that day, it wouldn't look like it was ready, because in order to put things together, we had to pull them apart. So you would have seen that all the desks were pushed out to the side of the classroom, and a lot of the teacher materials were out in the hallways. We were getting everything ready so that we could space out everyone in the classrooms to the maximum practical amount possible. And so the guidance was to have the individual principals work with their custodial staff to follow certain templates depending on what the size of the classroom was and what the particular furniture in the classroom was. So in addition, we addressed the egress, so the movement from when students arrive, and this will, continue to be the protocol. We set up these templates, and then we met with the principals individually for each school, and then we did building walkthroughs. So from those 4 staff members that I talked to, Kathy O'Dowd, myself, Kevin, and Rich Jalbert and Rich Torres, walked through each and every one of the schools to clarify any questions that they had for their particular space. So for example, one of the guidance was use as many building entry points as possible. So if you've got, normally kids would have arrived at 1 or 2 locations, open up as many doors as you can handle so that the students could remain cohorted. So for instance, Haystown had a way to open up one of the back doors so that all of their kindergarten and first graders are coming in one way, and they go directly into their classrooms, and they're remaining cohorted, so they're not coming in the same entrance as other students. The same thing for dismissals. We opened up as many, points of dismissal as practical within any given building. Cafeteria. So when we open, as you probably know, the secondary schools are going to be grab and go for their, grab and bring into the classroom for the breakfast, and then grab and go for the lunch. And the elementary schools are grab and go, bring into the classroom for the breakfast, and then they're going to the cafeteria in most places. Sometimes it's a hybrid, so sometimes it's some of the students are in the classroom, some of the cafeteria. It depends on what coverage they had and what they could handle in terms of the infrastructure of the individual building. We also addressed playground and outdoor use, which said that, maintain cohorting on the playground within classrooms, the identification of isolation rooms. So we visited each and every isolation room to make sure that if it had a window, if it didn't have a window, we purchased airflow. Is Rich on here? I don't remember the name. The air filter purification that has a particular name, HEPA filter, for each of the isolation rooms that don't have a window. And we also had swapped out doors so that there's a window in each of the doors for the isolation rooms so that staff can monitor the children and still be safe. We visited staff lounges and offices and took out extraneous furniture so that we were encouraging giving people places to be so that they could do their planning and eat their lunch, but not congregating in mass. the city ventilation. So I have an email from Sean Hanley. He's been working with us. Because I couldn't describe all the work that they did, directly. So I wanted to read from his words. They went through and looked at all the RTUs, which are the rooftop units and the air handling units. And they checked all the belts, monitors, controllers, actuators, linkage arms, dampers, and filter racks. And they replaced them with what's called a MERV 8 filter, or where appropriate and the airflow could handle it, what's called a MERV 13 filter, which is just a finer mesh of filter. And that's only where the flow can handle that type of a filter. In addition, we adjusted all of our building controls to allow to flush the air like an hour earlier in the morning and then 2 hours after closing at night. So there's more constant airflow in the building than would normally be set on our building maintenance system, our building management system. They also looked at all the exhaust fans and did performance maintenance on them, and includes replacing belts and motors as needed. In addition, we walked through with Sean, Kevin, myself, Rich, and used, I don't know the name of the device, but it measures the carbon, the CO2 within a given room. And the parent that wrote in mentioned levels below 800, and they were well below 500 in most cases. And where they weren't, there were adjustments made to the airflow. So we were well within the range, and there are plans to revisit as staff and students return, because the CO2 is a little bit different when you have more people in the building. But we're well below the levels that you would expect to see with people not in the building. So we would expect that it would remain the same when people return, which is a good sign of fresh air coming into the buildings. We do have old buildings. We do have upgrades that we need to do. There are capital plans to address that. I can say that we're within the guidelines for what's recommended for airflow in our buildings now. Okay. In addition, so this is just talking about the process. So Dr. Sal engaged an architect. We established all the building specific templates, and we pushed those out to the building principals, who then planned out every classroom, every common space. I mean, they really thought through every single aspect of the kids being in the building. And I can't say enough about the custodial staff. I was so impressed with how the majority of the buildings were just spotless. And I was so grateful to them for making the buildings look so beautiful this summer, because they spent so much time painting and cleaning and getting the stuff ready while we were developing that model. Because while we didn't know whether we were going to be full in or hybrid, we couldn't tell them how many desks to put in the classroom and how to set up the egress. Once we had that information, they went with it. We do still have things to pull out of the buildings. We paused on that to let all the staff come in, that is coming in, all the staff that wants to be in, the teachers, to see their classrooms and to take out the rest of those extraneous materials, and then we'll go in and pull them out and put in storage, whatever needs to be stored. So we conducted all the walkthroughs, and we did revisits as needed where people needed additional guidance. There were questions about what was purchased. I just wanted to say we did purchase a lot of district-wide equipment. We did not push it out to the schools over the summer because we were concerned that it would walk. We didn't want to see all the PPE that we spent money on, just people taking it home, and the sanitizer. So we've to date earmarked and/or spent about $5 million on what I would call pandemic preparation, whether that's from academic pieces, so online instruction and distance learning, to the purchase of PPE, sanitizer, disinfectant. Rich, his entire warehouse is taken up with pallets of disinfectant. So when the kids come back, we're really ready to, and sanitizer, we're really ready to supply, even if the country supplies run low. I think we're in pretty good shape. We purchased through Kathy O'Dowd all face shields for every staff member that would like them, and we also purchased backup PPE that the nurses are keeping in case a student comes in and doesn't have the appropriate PPE or doesn't have any at all. We also push that out to our bus company, so they have a supply on hand. So if a kid shows up at the bus, we have additional PPE supplies so that the student can ride a bus. We purchased additional high school science desks. because they were actually 5-foot desks and there was just no way that we could get the number of kids that we needed to, students in a classroom. They're very old desks, so we purchased those to be able to do the distancing. Paper towel dispensers, replacing the airflow, the hand flow dispensers, which are not recommended, and wall dispensers for hand sanitizer placed in key areas, and sanitizer for every classroom that doesn't have, it's like a big gallon jug, every classroom that doesn't have like hand washing sink. In addition, we provided it in the classrooms with hand washing sinks, but we're encouraging hand washing through signage and through reminders with training. So we also established some policies and procedures. So we limited and restricted school access to only essential employees. And that means that there's a table outside, and if a parent comes in and, wants to bring in a lunch for a kid that forgot to bring their lunch to school, they're reminded to stay outside and someone will come in to get it from them. We established new cleaning protocols for the bathrooms, and we are in the process of hiring, when kids come back, additional seasonal custodial staff for every school. And we established updated fire drills and lockdowns because there's going to be floor signage, that's directional floor signage, and we wanted to make sure that students and staff know that it's, go to your nearest exit, do not follow the signage on the floors. So there's guidance on that. And each school established a reopening committees and safety committees with representation from all members of the school community. So that includes paraprofessionals, lunch staff, custodial staff, teaching staff, everyone that's involved in keeping staff and students safe in the buildings. We've conducted training series, one that Kathy O'Dowd put together, which is what school personnel need to know. And it's very fact-based, and it's linked to all CDC documents. And there's a lot of really great videos that we train staff in about hand washing, mask wearing, order appropriate masks, 6-foot distancing, all the things that staff needed to know to keep each other safe. Fire safety protocols, we trained our custodian staff in appropriate cleaning and use of supplies, so making sure that we're still complying with the requirements for keeping asthmatic children safe, and making sure that we're not just disinfecting, but we're also sanitizing. And people also were trained in their regular bloodborne pathogen training series. So our next steps, while we're getting ready for a hopefully October reentry, is to continue to review the airflow maintenance with building staff. So, continually look as people come back into the building. As I said, keep testing the systems and distributing the PPE to the nursing staff. So Kathy has done that this week. And so they're ready to go with backup PPE for people that don't, that show up without it. And Kelly has also worked with Kathy to purchase special PPE equipment for all special needs staff that work with students with special needs, which includes gowns and gloves and additional face shields and protective desk shields and things like that. And you can see on this slide, there's stickers with one-way directional and reminders. Most of the stickers are down in the schools now and are placed, but some schools said, can I pause on this because I really need to get up and running with this full remote model. So they paused for a minute, while school gets started, and we're going to go back into the buildings next week and make sure they have the help they need to continue to finish putting down the signage. And then we'll revisit the furniture and room setup depending on when we re-enter. If the numbers have shifted a little bit, we'll have to look at the classroom setups and help to space kids out more if we can do that, and make adjustments as needed. So that's our update on building safety and building readiness. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Dr. Zhao. We can't hear you though. I think you're still on mute.
Is Kelly there?
I'm here.
Would you update on Granville? I'd like people.
Sure. So we're still working on working with the builder to finish the project at Granville, which will house 8 of our preschool classes for this year. He is on a tight timeline to try to get it completed for the first week of October for us. He's been working with the district, with the IT team, regarding kind of the technology infrastructure. We're working with a police officer who's also in security to make sure that we have top-notch security installed, visual cameras, inside and outside of the building, security systems and protocols in place. He's also customizing some of the areas and spaces to make sure that we have sufficient space for our related services, such as our OT and PT, so that they don't have to share joint spaces with the physical education teacher like they currently do. And I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a nice new facility. Rich and his team are on kind of standby to help move in our stuff as quickly as possible. And as soon as we get the green light from the city that we're approved to start moving in, we will go ahead and do so. But there are some finalizing things that still need to occur. And so I keep in regular contact with him to try to ensure we can get in there as close to the start of October as possible.
Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions of Courtney. This would be a good time. Rich Jalbert, is he there? Richard?
He is. I'm sorry, Dr. Sal. I didn't even get to acknowledge. And Rich has worked incredibly hard all summer. He is here. Rich?
Rich, anything to add?
Thank you. No, just to, reinforce what Courtney said. We've been working very diligently, school by school, making sure the, social distance stickers are on the floors. We've put up approximately 200 pieces of plexiglass dividers for secretaries and safety advocates. We've done more painting than we've ever done in the past 10 years with the amount of time. So if you go into schools, they're looking cleaner and nicer than they ever been. And we just keep on working towards the goal.
So question I would have of you there, Richard and Courtney. Wednesdays we've decided as many districts to use it as making sure our staff and students are not in for extra cleaning. So do you want to talk a little bit about your protocol during that day so people are aware why we're doing it?
Sure. The goal is the only people in on Wednesdays are school lunch because they're still distributing food. And we're basically doing a deep cleaning every Wednesday, which is a thorough cleaning of every room and disinfecting. It is a two-step process. You have to clean first and then disinfect. So that's what we're doing on Wednesdays. All touch points, bathrooms, light switches, doorknobs, desktops to the game.
The board did hear a little bit about some extra personnel coming in during the day. Any comments about that to help with cleanliness?
Sure. We have job posting for what's called a temp custodian. When we go to a hybrid plan, we plan on bringing in an extra custodian at all the schools, specifically to clean the bathrooms and disinfect during the day. State guidelines recommend bathrooms are cleaned twice a day as opposed to just at the end of the night. So that's what we're going to be doing.
And I can't let this go without asking Kevin. Kevin is the liaison with the with our program in terms of the established mitigation program. And I heard a comment about no teacher input. Any comments about that, Kevin?
Well, I think we mentioned this in some of our previous meetings. The true teacher voice is going to be found in the reopening plans of all of our schools. So Courtney, in her presentation earlier, she mentioned that every school is going to have a local reopening committee. And so these plans are going to come alive at our campuses throughout the district, all 18 schools, with the support of teacher, safety advocate, nurses, paraprofessional, all of their voices and participation in the process. And so, I think we had heard some of the feedback earlier in this process when we were, first revealing the plan and accept the responsibility. It certainly could have been greater teacher participation. But we made sure as part of this implementation process, where it really counts in our schools is that we're asking our principals to make sure that the teachers, paraprofessionals, they have appropriate representation. So we did note this from one of our previous discussions and feel like, it's everyone is going to have the voice that they deserve as these plans are being played out implemented at the schools.
Thanks, Kevin. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the city, Sean and Antonio, for their help. They have over 70 buildings, and they did come in and prioritize and work with us. It's been difficult, so it's been a good team approach. Got a lot more work to do. I think this DL time has permitted us to do some refining. We're learning from some of our suburban surrounding district what's going on to help us out, but I need to thank the city for all of their assistance as well. So I think unless people have questions, we can move on, Gladys.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, Kate.
I just was wondering if there's an update about the Osborne Street facility.
No, I mean, let me just update you in general. The matrix, things are still moving forward. What does that mean? That means that people are looking at it that are decision makers. So I have not been told anything about it other than the State Department, the building group they look at, they're comfortable with the idea. So from that standpoint, I guess going on, but that's all I know. The Osborne project, Courtney, do you have any update on that?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I think as far as I know, we're still on track. The funding was approved and it's for next year, like 1 year from September, so September 2021.
Right.
That would be, yeah. So as far as I know, that project hasn't shifted in its timeline at all.
The only thing we're doing, Kate, we're trying to anticipate and look for, particularly now because we have to move a lot of desks and things out of schools, we're looking for another site that may be available to take care of us while this year goes through, and then we figure at least 2 years of construction. So we have a place for everyone to put supplies and park our added storage issues. So that's what we're working on.
Okay.
But that's all I know at this point.
Dr. Sal, if I could add, the city is in the process of finalizing architect for the project. I've met with 3 architectural firms this week to show them around Osborne Street. So they are in the process of narrowing it down to selecting an architect.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if the whole board heard you, because you were engaged this week to meet with some architects and went around looking at Osborne. So they're screening for architects, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Richard.
I've got a question for Courtney.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, I do, Gladys. I have a question for Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, Courtney, at some point in the near future, is there a way that you can give us a cost analysis in hard categories, not specific details? I don't care how many faucets and stuff you bought, but how much we spent on the so-called COVID pandemic situation in terms of last year, how much we spent on it in last year's budget, and how much we spent on it in the current year's budget. And can you determine from what sources of revenue that came from? In other words, was it all CARES money, or part of this was from our budget, et cetera, et cetera? If you could furnish us with that when you feel you're at a completion date, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, I'd be happy to, Rich. Yeah, it's a little bit of a moving target in that, depending on what we continue to do, I can tell you right now what we've committed and encumbered based on our assumption that we'll be back in mid-October or October, and then if that changes, we'll just give you updates. But yeah, we do have something that we have been tracking all the spending from last year, this year against the CARES Act money, the new coronavirus funds, the additional technology that the state gave us directly, as well as our grant carryover funds that we had this year. So I'd be happy to share that. Yeah.
Great. Well, the question may be kind of difficult. In these figures, I guess suspect what we're talking about are material costs. Is there any way to estimate or evaluate what a labor cost is attributed to this? I know the labor that you purchased for outside contractors, et cetera, is there, but our own internal staff in terms of man hours used, you know, is that a possibility to try to estimate something like that?
That's a good question. You mean man hours used in preparation and planning for?
Exactly, such as, you know, Rich Jalbert spending, you know, 3 months of his time basically on this and other things. I could work with you on some of the concepts on that, but
Sure.
I think it'll be an interesting exercise when we put both these numbers together, a firm number for material costs and another realistic estimated cost for labor. I think we'll find out that this cost is huge outstanding cost.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, even just in the time commitment that cabinet and Rich and principals and teachers. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you very much. And you guys have done an outstanding job. Personally, I want to thank you all. I'm going to ask Gladys if it's okay to speak on behalf of the board, because I'm sure the board feels the same as I do. Both the teachers, the janitorial staff, the administrative, and everybody has done an incredible job. I do adhere to what Aaron had mentioned, that people have to be a little bit sympathetic to the opening of this, to basically be patient so that we can debug stuff that we've never done before. And thank you again for your help.
Thank you, Gladys.
Okay. Courtney, thank you. And thank Rich and your entire team for doing a great job. We certainly appreciate it. And we know that you will continue to do a job that's going to continue to make things better for our students once and our staff once they come back to school. Thank you again.
Thank you, Gladys. That means a lot to us. Thank you.
Okay. Before we move on to our action item, Rachel, I want you to make the motion for the action items. We need some. We are going to table the 4 action items until our next board meeting. And once we make a motion to table, there's no discussion. So, Mr. Walston, would you want to come on and just briefly let us know why we're going to table this and just wait until next month to accept the 4 action items?
Yes, Ms. Cooper. So we just ask so that the board and the community has more time to review the 4 policies. We posted the CAPE version of the policies, but the policies that this board approved for first reading were actually the appropriate ones, the right ones. However, we posted the CAPE version, and we just want to make sure that the community has an opportunity to see the appropriate ones for the next meeting. So we did make the adjustment that Joe had recommended. I know I don't think he's on yet, that Joe had recommended. And so we did make that update. And so that was actually noted in the agenda. And then we'll have everything ready for the community to see in time for our next board meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watson. And thank Rachel, who's chairperson of the policy committee. Rachel, could you make the motion? We're going to do all 4 of them at the same time, okay?
Sure. I'll make a motion to table action items A through D until our next meeting.
Motion by Rachel. Could I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded, who's aye?
Amy, sorry.
Okay. The motion was made by Rachel, seconded by Amy. Kate, could you do the roll call, please?
Of course. Rachel Shaleski.
Aye.
Kate Canetta. Aye. Gladys Cooper.
Aye.
Lauren Daly.
Aye.
Joe DeSilva.
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro.
Aye.
Al Russo.
Aye.
Amy Spolino.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. 10 in favor.
Thank you all. Superintendent's report.
Relax and listen to this one. This is going to be overwhelming. But if you look at the agenda, Kara aptly put a goal out there, and I just want to reinstate it for the board. What was our goal for the opening was to get students connected and we'll comment about that tonight with Gina. Build relationship and community in the classroom. Social emotional is something that has been very important and a missing link in many respects, and we're acknowledging that need. The orient students to the norms, expectation, and tools that they will need to be successful in the digital environment. No easy task. The high school is still handing out computers. We are handing out computers, setting up hotspots, doing a number of things so our kids are engaged. And it's evolutionary, keeps happening daily for us. You heard what Aaron said. I thank the board for your indulgence in permitting us to have those extra days, because I think they were spent well. Although we would like to have had them in person, but we had to make a modification. And the work that Kelly with her staff and Kara and her staff and all of them, it's just been incredible to roll this out, because it doesn't happen without the teachers in the classroom each and every day. And those three, that goal is really relevant to us. So I will start with Kara. I will reserve some time at the end. I do want to make a comment regarding the situation that was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting by a parent, but I would like to go through this first, if we can. So we'll start with Kara in terms of, unlike Hartford and some of the other communities, we were able to start without a hitch somewhat. But go ahead, Kara.
So just to Dr. Sal's point, there's been just a tremendous amount of hard work that has gone into the planning to get ready for the opening that was this week. So I do want to commend all of the teachers and administrators who put in extraordinary hours, administrators for probably at least a month and a half leading up to this. Nights, weekends, vacations, they're around the clock. And, planning and preparing for 8 days of professional development was no small feat. And receiving that professional development, if you were a teacher, was also not easy to do. So there's a lot of information to take in. There was a lot of planning involved. And then we're also kind of trying to make the shift with new learning, as well as working in an environment that we're not used to receiving professional development in. So it went relatively well. Again, there's a lot of information in over 8 days, and a lot of hard work that has gone in from all parties. And it's been a true team effort on everyone's part. So I just want to make sure to put that out there. So one of the things that I think is really important for the community to understand is that we're in a period of making sure that we are number one priority connecting kids, and that we are ensuring equity. So there's been a huge push to get kids connected to technology. Gina could talk a little bit about the laptop distribution, but that has been an ongoing process to anyone who needs a laptop. Principals have been meeting students and families' needs round the clock with convenient times to do pickups, robocalls, multiple languages, you name it, to make sure that we get the access to students as soon as possible. We have really good connectivity rates. I spoke to every school principal today, except for one, to just, how is it going? What do you need? How is the connectivity? What are the biggest issues that you're dealing with in terms of connectivity? And we definitely had some initial Google glitches. There was a nationwide issue with Google Meets. Of course, I believe it was in part due to the fact that probably 75% of the country was logging into Google Classroom and Google Meets on the same 2 days. So they're probably working on their bandwidth and how to handle all of that traffic. But we definitely managed to get through today as well. And it was intermittent. It wasn't everybody, and it wasn't at all times, but there was definitely a few glitches there. We had some typical connectivity issues in terms of my password. How do I get in? How does this work? And people kind of maybe waiting until Tuesday morning to try to read through some of the information that was shared. And teachers worked through the day to connect students. And at the end of the day, on both days, they reached out and circled back to students who maybe didn't connect in the classroom. Every single principal, particularly at K-5 and even 6-8, mentioned that the pleasantly surprised with, there's 1 or 2 kids missing, maybe 3 in each of the classes. and that in many cases they had accounted for at least one or two of those students as either new students that were still registering, or they had contacted the phone in the office to say that they were having some issues and they were working through some of those. So there was a pretty good deal of connectivity, and that made many of us very happy. And I'm sure Carol Wanzer will update you on sort of the overall percentages, but over the last couple of days, it was pretty good, and not too far off from what we would normally maybe see during a typical year where people are still coming back from vacation or they hadn't quite checked in yet. So I'm relatively pleased with the general connectivity. But number one is to make sure we're connecting with kids. And then the next piece is really, so now we get kids connected. How are we engaging them? How are we attending to their needs? How are we building community and navigating this new environment, building relationships all over again, particularly being sensitive to the fact that we may have new students who have never stepped foot in our buildings just yet and need to orient themselves to their classmates and feel that connection with their teacher and with the students that are in that room in a digital environment, which takes a little bit of extra finesse to be able to do. So big push on the social emotional learning and building those relationships and eliciting from kids sort of how they have been, where they have been, and letting them know that we really miss them and that we're happy to have them back. Along those lines, while this is taking place in the classrooms, we've had kindergarten orientation taking place this week and finishing up this week. And principal after principal mentioned how fantastic that was. Having the tents outside was a huge success. Kids were coming in. We got a chance to meet the parents as well as the student and really do that one-on-one walk through with the technology, which was so needed with the kindergarten students. I wish I could have done maybe a first and second grade orientation too, but that ship has sailed a little bit. So we're doing that orientation now through the regular means. But the kindergarten orientation has been going well. The other piece too that was a real focus is it's going to take some time for students to understand how to navigate their Google Classrooms. We put in some new structures and organizational pieces, and teachers are walking students through just how to navigate that environment, where to find links, how to hear where their weekly planner is, where the course syllabus is. There'll be open houses that will be upcoming where teachers will walk parents through those Google Classrooms and how to get information and what they can expect in terms of sort of the weekly overview. So we're happy about, those organizational pieces, but they do take time to orient students through. They're also asked to kind of work on digital citizenship. And so for those of you kind of, what is digital citizenship? It's really about understanding what a student responsibility is in a digital environment, how to navigate that environment responsibly, understanding a little bit about cyberbullying, appropriate behavior, and how to sift through lots of information that they'll have access to and how to navigate that appropriately and with integrity. So there's a lot of work ahead there. We also have lots of programs that we've been able to resource for students. You'll hear things like IXL, RAS Kids, Imagine Learning, Edgenuity. There are Read 180, Math 180. We have all sorts of different programs at different levels for different reasons. And so students need to be able to understand how those programs operate, what their responsibility is for those. So you will see over the next couple of days, at least the next 5 or 6 days or so, that teachers will really spend time working on that as classes become ready and students are connected and they're operating as a whole and ready to go. They'll start moving into more academic and curricular pieces, but for now it is connect, build those relationships, and orient to the digital environment. And when those things are done well, then the students and teacher can move more efficiently through curriculum and be able to concentrate on those next pieces. So we were very pleasantly surprised today with that, the last 2 days with the reports. And some students have already received their supplies. The district purchased a fair amount of supplies for students so that everyone has access at home to be able to participate and to utilize tools that they'll need. So we sent home markers, dry erasers, pocket pals, art paper will be going home, math manipulatives, and a variety of other materials, composition notebooks, art pens. So if students haven't received those bags yet, the schools will be scheduling a pickup time that works best for distribution very soon. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we had. We did have a couple issues with a little bit of bombing in Google Hangout. So we did have a couple of students where they had accessed another classroom's link. So students shared their Google Meet link out on social media, and other students accessed that. So we have, we'll be addressing that with students, but that is also part of the digital citizenship, which is why we have to have good conversations with students about how they should behave in this environment. So, these things will come up, and we'll address them as they surface. I also want to address a little bit about a couple things about special areas. So there were some sticky issues K-5 in special areas, but it was mostly along, if you can envision a virtual handoff to another teacher. So instead of a teacher walking their class down to art, music, or PE, we have sort of a virtual handoff where students are guided to another link. And so we're working through sort of practicing that with both the students and the teacher, as well as making sure those Google Meet links are up and running. So we'll be pushing through that. And then there were some questions about Flex and asynchronous learning. And so we did receive a couple of emails about Wednesdays at the high school and in some cases at the middle school. And so on Wednesdays, Wednesdays is primarily a small group instruction day, basically for the district. And so our program is made up of both synchronous and asynchronous experiences, as well as some defined times for small group instruction. So on Wednesdays, particularly at the high school where Flex is noted, as particularly once school gets underway more and more of the academics start to flow out of the high school, there'll be a lot of expectation for students to be completing asynchronous assignments on Wednesday, but also plenty of opportunities to access small group instruction and one-to-one support with their teachers. And so we thought that that was a very important day for students to be able to do that. Some parents got an email today that they were thrilled that that was built in because they were worried about screen time and flexibility. And we have some parents that were not happy about it and want it to be pure academic driven day. So in terms of like direct live instruction. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit around what Flex is and how it's used. Typically during the regular school year and work week, there's 40 minutes a day dedicated to Flex. That's over 200 minutes. And so we have sort of tagged that up and compacted that on the Wednesdays. So it also provides some flexibility for students to receive the small group, but then also to complete some of those asynchronous coursework that they'll have as the year starts to progress. I'm trying to think if there's anything else along those lines. I think that is pretty much Dr. Sal.
As we move, there should be some questions at the end. So all of this going on, question sometimes comes around. I know Ann Mead, you're on here. How can we support parents to support the youngsters? Are you on, Ann?
I am.
Could you briefly tell the board what we're doing with that?
Good evening, everyone. So over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we have at the Family and Community Engagement Center spent a fair amount of time working with parents that have come in that have questions about connectivity, about how to navigate the different platforms that we're using. So my staff has been working with them as well as supporting central registration. From that, we have just recently this week deployed a fair amount of staff to help out with interpreters at the kindergarten registry or kindergarten orientations. Big kudos and thank you to Staples, who has provided us with over 500 bags of materials that we have distributed to the schools to go out to students in addition to what we already have purchased. So families were able to buy either $5 or $10 bags to distribute, and they're already packed up and ready to go. So they're out in the schools ready to go to the families. We were able to add to Kara's and her team learning manual guidebook, a whole family and school partnership guide onto that, so that teachers have more resources at their fingertips to be able to connect with our families out there. As we know, once that relationship is built, then we have smoother sailing, especially in the digital environment. We are working with Jen to update the website, and under Family and Community Resources, we have a new resource page there that is chock full of tutorials in multiple different languages. We actually did one on Zoom and Google Etiquette, so that parents can review that. I'm thinking we might want to put up something on digital citizenship as well. And then we have a childcare program that begins next week at PAL with Ed Advance, and that is enrolling families. We are seeing a large uptick in family childcare homes taking more children. The Office of Early Childhood let the family childcare providers, normally that can only have school-age children for a very small amount of the day, have them now for longer periods of time. So older children may be in a family childcare home with their younger siblings. So that's helping cohort families together a little bit more, and the children are getting support while they're there. Lastly, through our Priority School Grant and our 21st Century Learning program, we will begin tutoring next week after school with certified teachers for children that have been identified either by their teachers or by their principals as needing more help. And so we'll start that rollout after the teacher's regular day, around 3:30 or 4, give them a little break, and then be able to work with students that still need more help. So my office, as small as it is, really does work hard at getting the resources that parents need, answering the phone. We take over 150 phone calls a day from families, looking for everything from food to supplies, heating, fuel, things like that. So busy office, and we're looking forward to finding our new space temporarily while we move out for the construction at Osborne Street.
Thank you. Gina, as long as you're on, could you just quickly update, since Amber up the registration on how that's going? Because you remember what happened to us last year. Gina, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, speak up.
Okay, can you hear me?
No.
No.
Louder. Hello?
No?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better? Okay. Yeah, I will speak about enrollment and then move on to devices and technology. Is that okay?
No, just stay with enrollment.
Okay, so we're still seeing enrollment come in, certainly not at the rate that we did last year. And currently we have about 130 kids in the queue who are handing in their paperwork, and we're verifying their information. Some kindergarten kids, and but we're definitely not seeing what we saw last year as far as a big surge.
Right, that's been what that's what we've been monitoring.
Yeah.
I know that was on everybody's mind. So before we get to the next phase here, seeing how we're talking about parents and technology, you talk about the hotspots and how you're working with parents. And then we'll go to Kelly, will be next to talk about setting up for her special programming. Go ahead. Go ahead, Gina. Gina.
Okay, so we do have a few hotspots in the district, and any parent who has reached out to me, we have given access to the hotspot for them. My big push is going to be with Comcast and the internet vouchers, which we were awarded through the state. And I got information yesterday that we should be receiving some more information on when we're going to get the vouchers and how they're getting to us next week. The state was just finalizing their deal with Comcast, and they've already finalized deals with smaller internet providers, and Cox and Comcast were the last two that they had to update. So I anticipate once that happens, we'll be able to hand out our vouchers. Currently, many principals have reached out to me with families who have reached out to them about the need for a better internet connection. And so we're gathering all that information, and as soon as we can, we'll get those vouchers out.
Anything else about technology update then you'd like to alert the board to, as long as you're up?
Just that the device distribution continues. This week we're concentrating on kindergarten. Last week it was all new students and anyone who had a broken device. And we will keep along with that. And anyone who needs help, if they have a broken device and they don't know where to go, can visit their school website. There's a link on each school website to reach out to a technician for help. And we monitor that on a daily basis.
Okay. So technology, connectivity. Carol, maybe it's better to go to Carol Wanza and then to Kelly. Carol Wanza, you want to talk about the connectivity?
Sure. I think a lot of administrators were pleasantly surprised at the amount of students.
Carol, you're going to have to speak up. It's hard to hear you.
So I think a lot of administrators were pleasantly surprised around how many students they had in attendance when they were working with their staff and speaking with their staff. We had an overall rate of 90.4% across the district, which is a couple percentage points below our normal first day attendance. We are working out several procedural issues and protocols around attendance that we need to kind of shore up. The state gave out some guidance at the end of last week around more specific definitions and reporting that we have to do. So I imagine that this number will change as we go in and make corrections through Friday. I believe, we're seeing a higher rate than expected kind of at the 9-12 level. It was pretty close to where they were last year, considering that we're remote. I think there was a 3 percentage point difference, or 4 percentage point difference at the elementary. It slightly dipped below what we normally see. But that's to be expected as our youngest learners are learning to navigate this new system. We'll be working with elementary and secondary principals tomorrow to speak more closely around what the protocols are going to be around attendance and how to identify students that are not engaged at all. Those students do have to now be reported to the state, so we'll be closely tracking those numbers and those families and reaching out. That's it.
Okay. Kelly.
Sure. So beginning tomorrow, we will start in the special education department in bringing students in to conduct evaluations. We will be using Rogers Park Middle School as well as Sacred Heart, which is our one of our current preschool locations. So we'll be doing preschool evaluations at Sacred Heart, or our early childhood center. And we'll be doing evaluations for students in kindergarten through 12th grade at Rogers Park Middle School. We'll be using one floor of the building. It'll be one staff member, one student per classroom. All PPE has been provided or will be provided, as well as sanitizer, Lysol wipes, spray to clean materials in between students. We are scheduling students, either 1 or 2 students per day, to come in and work with a staff member. We have staggering start times. So myself, as well as the special education supervisors, will be present and on site. We will be having parents drop students off at the door, with a few rare exceptions for students with certain needs. But parents, for the most part, will be leaving the students with the staff member. The psychologist, for example, that's conducting the evaluation, will walk the child down to their designated location. All things will be sanitized and cleaned in between students. They will work with the students. We'll make sure that, we give them appropriate breaks between evaluations, snack breaks, and so forth. So we're excited to bring kids in. We'll have about 15 kids at Rogers Park tomorrow, and about 7 or 8 students at the preschool level. So it is a small group. We'll have at least 1 staff member for every student that is present, probably a few more with the administrative oversight. And we worked today with Christy. A big thank you to her and her team for graciously letting us to work in the building, as well as Kathy for making sure we have all the PPE set up, and Courtney and her team for helping us to do the extra cleaning that's needed as a result. So this will be one step in bringing some of our needier students in to do part of their programming that's required by law. And then moving forward, depending, and working and partnering with Kathy and the health department, as well as our medical advisors, one of the questions that we are considering is, depending on the decision that gets made on October 1st, particular consideration to our high needs special education students, so those students that are in self-contained programs, and whether or not we can bring in small cohorts of those students into school safely. For the month of September, the health advisors did not feel that it was in children's and staff best interest to do so, but certainly it is something that the state has asked us to give special consideration to. And so my team and I are already working on preparation, should that be a reality. Across the district, we have about 1,700 special education students, and what we would deem as the high needs as outlined by the state and their guidance would be about 300 of those students. So a much smaller subset of our special education population, but still 300 students. And so is a sizable number, and how to go about doing that safely. And that doesn't mean all day, every day, but that does mean for some time with live instruction with their special education and related service providers. Just for the board's knowledge, in looking at the evaluations that we're conducting starting tomorrow, we did slightly alter the evaluation responsibilities. Typically, our school psychologists don't do our academic testing. It's just policy and protocol and the way we've done business in Danbury. They are fully qualified to do those evaluations. And so in an effort to utilize their time and energy to get the evaluations and connections with kids through that done, and keep our special education teachers who usually do the academic testing in front of kids so that they continue to receive that live virtual instruction, we've made that alteration. It will be a slight change. We are getting parent consent to do that, but we did feel it was in the best interest of kids to have them have the time with their special ed teacher through the distance learning virtual instruction, and then designate a majority of our school psychologist time to work on the evaluations. So that's an update. Special ed department.
Quite a bit. Kim, you want to update the board with the staffing, how we're putting this all together?
Yep. Sure. So this year, we're just rounding the bend on completing teacher hiring. We still have a couple of vacancies open that we're trying to fill now. But so far this year, we've brought in 113 teachers. To give you an idea of scale, last year at this time, we were at about 163. So we're definitely lighter. But 113 certified staff members were processed by my 2 full-time staff team members. We did all of their onboarding virtually this year, which went very smoothly. We've figured out how to do their ID cards remotely so that their ID cards and laptops can be ready for distribution upon their arrival. So those certified staff members have all been processed and onboarded at this point. In addition to those 113, we've also brought on 30 of our regular either building subs or interventionists, people that are working daily in the building with students or as substitutes. Those folks are now in place, and they are serving primarily as substitutes on the occasions when we need them in the full distance learning model. At the same time, we've opened our substitute teaching pool. We have about 250 substitutes currently in there. We're in the process of continuing to stay in contact with them because they won't become active until such time as our students return to the hybrid model. So we're trying to maintain connections with them so that we can keep them engaged in Danbury so that when we're ready to call upon them, they're available. And that will include rolling out some training, some video modules for them to watch, just to keep them, as I said, engaged. In addition to that group of people, we've also onboarded 22 non-certified staff members outside of the para and tutor ranks. So this would be, for example, new nurses and other non-certified staff members. So an additional 22 of them. We have seen an uptick in resignations from our para and tutor staffing. We believe that some of that may be because they have been remote now for quite some time, and some of them have found other positions in other career paths in other places. So we have so far held off on backfilling those tutor spots in particular. And I'm working with Kelly closely so that we'll be prepared to pivot to in-person learning in whatever form it is that we have it and we'll have the staff available to cover those needs at the time that we're ready to enroll them. So right now we're on a pause for filling those tutor vacancies, of which we have quite a few, as well as Rich Jalbert mentioned earlier, the seasonal custodians who will move slowly through bringing those folks on board with an eye toward having them in place when students arrive in the building. In addition, because we are not engaged in in-person learning, we are not running our ELP program right now. So that is our before school and after school programs. Those employees have been furloughed for the moment. So they have been told without a fee for service model in place that we can't maintain their status as active employees for the moment. We're hopeful when we flip back to the hybrid model, we'll be able to staff again. Many of those folks are existing Danbury employees. So there are teachers, our paraprofessionals, our other substitutes. So they're at the ready for, or will be at the ready when we're ready to move back into that in-person model with ELP. I've spent a lot of time over the last 10 days or so working very, very closely with union leadership of all kinds, not only with the teachers, but also with the administrators, but also with all of our non-certified unions. We've spent a lot of time talking with them, answering questions about what it looks like to be back in the buildings. And I'm happy to say that those folks are all back in on a full-time schedule, with the exception of Wednesdays, except by invitation. And so those folks have been moving through the preparation process and helping us to get ready for the moment when we all hope that we can welcome students in some fashion back in person. So a lot of conversations, a lot of tweaking, and a lot of really listening to the feedback from the folks on the ground about what we can do to make sure that they're comfortable and safe, feeling good about being back at work. In addition to that, what is new this year for us is the accommodation process. As we've talked about repeatedly in the past, we have quite a few staff members who are very concerned about the impact that their serious health conditions have on their ability to report to work in an in-person model. So right now we've had a total of 100 of our employees requesting some sort of accommodation. Of that 161 of them are teachers, certified staff members requesting accommodation. And among those, the breakout is 24 at the elementary level and 37 at the secondary level. In addition, we've had 36 non-certified staff members similarly request accommodations. The requests range from enhanced PPE or enhanced cleaning protocols to the opportunity to work fully from home without entering the building and interacting with students or colleagues. So right now, my team member, Jen Gonzalez, has been my right hand, left hand, and middle hand on this. And we are in the process of engaging as required by law, but also just by good labor relations, to meet in person with every one of those 100 employees. So we have started that process. Everyone was asked to submit medical information. And as a follow-up now, we're sitting with each of them on Zoom calls, and we're having discussions with them about what we can provide to them in terms of reasonable accommodations without an undue hardship on the district. So the non-certified folks are more or less finished, and we're moving into, with the exception of tutors, we're moving in now to the certified staff members, and we'll be meeting with them daily. We've been doing this for about 10 days, and I would imagine probably for the next 2 weeks. And part of the conversation is not only do they have what they need in terms of accommodations for right now in the full distance learning model, where there may be teachers that are coming in, certainly in the special ed context, but also when we flip back to the hybrid model, what can we do for them in order to accommodate? In some cases, that's going to be the ability to provide a distance learning teaching opportunity and only distance learning, but those will primarily be focused at the elementary level. And so the other conversations are, can we provide similar accommodations across all levels? So as I said, those 100 or so meetings are going on now. In addition to that, we have seen a small handful of our staff who are seeking assistance through the Families First Coronavirus Act, which has a variety of provisions in it that include provisions not only for their own health and safety, but also provisions for childcare in the event that their childcare situation, which could include school, has been closed. So I'm working with those folks, again, under the auspices of the Families First Coronavirus Act and the provisions there for leave or intermittent leave. And we're proceeding through that handful, although we do anticipate that we'll see an uptick in those requests when we are ready to move back to the hybrid model. Lastly, as we round the bend on those pieces, we are turning to reporting obligations because those continue. So my team is working on making sure that we know who is where, which certified and non-certified staff members are located where, and we're in the process of compiling those reports that are required by the state with October 1st numbers. So that starts. And lastly, the negotiations continue, and thank you to the 2 board members who are going to participate in the nurses negotiations with us. Many of you might recall that that contract actually expired on July 1st. And so we are working under the old terms, but have been collaborating closely with the nurses leadership in this interim period. And so we're ready to schedule that meeting for the end of September, and we'll hopefully move forward to at least get them an interim agreement so that they can have their terms and conditions set anew with this turn of the new school year. So it's been very busy. Great kudos to my team. They are working around the clock, and I think they've got everybody where they need to be, at least virtually, with what they need to do their jobs. And I will say, I have had the great pleasure of talking with so many staff members, including teachers and non-certified staff, in the last 2 weeks in circumstances that are really, really difficult. These are people who have got some real issues to deal with, and they have been kind, they have been generous, and they are working very, very hard to do the best they can right now with our opening this week. And I echo Erin's sentiments from earlier tonight. I applaud the efforts of the teachers, some of whom are working under some really difficult circumstances. And I say to all of them, we will get through this and we'll get you what you need. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Kim. Because it was asked, who hires teachers? Just tell the board what that process is, because we were asking at the beginning of the meeting.
Sure. So the way this works is when we do a posting, typically many of our postings are for backfilled positions, so people who have left the district and we need to replace them. But some are new postings or different kinds of postings. The posting goes up. We check to make sure that we've budgeted the position and the posting contains what it needs to contain. And through that, we consult with administrators, often central office folks, and building principals. The posting goes up. And then at the building level, we have a really decentralized process. So building administrators are typically responsible for screening. It can be volumes of applicants. For an elementary position, we may get 300, 400 applicants who go into the pool. AppleTrack is a great function for us for sorting. So we're able to kind of sort through and help our administrators to do that with what they're looking for. They whittle down a list. They create a short list for interviewing. Often the interview includes a panel of other teachers in the building or other staff members. There's often a demonstrative task. It might be a lesson. It might be a live lesson. It might be a writing sample. That committee then will make a recommendation through the building principal to central office. We have what we call a final hiring report. Once they have checked references, they've checked, checked to make sure that the people have, or at least purport to have what they're looking for. They send that to central office where it's again vetted by Dr. Sal, myself, often other administrators in central office. We take a look through and set the process of placing them into the salary scale, at which time I will personally call to make the offer to employees or potential employees, talk through with them any questions on certification, if they need alternate certification or a durational shortage permit, whatever it might be, and that's where that process ends. So in some, it's a very decentralized process, but it has the checks and balances of coming through central office for that last kind of big picture look.
Okay, well, thank you, because the question was asked. I thought so that's how we hire her. Also, the next biggest thing that we have going has been the review of our mitigation work, particularly with Kathy O'Dowd and with Kara Prunty, and they're with us tonight. And the two things would like them first update us on what's going on with athletics, because we've been working with that diligent, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago when we had to go to remote, and also the review process for looking at data in terms of our return. So, Kara Prunty, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
And Kathy. So we'll start with Kara, and then Kathy, you can chime in. Go ahead, Kara.
So just a quick update about athletics. We will be starting, we made the recommendation to Dr. Sal today to be able to start modified practices Friday with following almost the same exact protocols from July, with the understanding that we will be monitoring this very closely. And if anything changes, then we'll have to make adjustments to that. In reviewing things for going forward in October, we have a time set up to meet towards the middle of the month, where we're going to be kind of looking at how the numbers have been trending, what's going on with the metrics, specifically, in regards to Labor Day weekend, 2 weeks after that, and also with all of the other schools opening in the area in Danbury. So we're going to see if that has any implications on our metrics in Danbury. Is there anything else that you want to add, Kathy?
Kathy?
Thank you, Kara. And again, thank you for your collaboration and all of your hard work. Kara and I continue to communicate pretty much on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. We will continue to look at the metrics. And we're also collaborating with the health department and the community health centers to offer COVID screening sites at our schools. We've had a number of drive-through screening clinics, and that's certainly helping us to get the testing numbers up and getting the data that we need so that we can make a safe evaluation.
So Kathy and Kara, I think as a board member, I'd like them to hear this. I've been talking to surrounding superintendents, learning, because they're opening early. One thing I could tell you that not many folks are riding buses. That was a question I think someone had asked. That's something we observed. But also we have observed 3 districts the last 2 days that have entered into COVID, and they've had to alert their community regarding the event and what procedurally. And I know it's in our reentry plan, but Kara and Kathy, could you just briefly review for the board so they hear what it is, the process that we were going through if in fact a student is reported to have COVID, so that they're aware about what would happen?
Sure. So if I'm notified that we have a student or a staff member that has tested positive for COVID, of course, Dr. Sal is notified, our medical advisors, and I immediately contact Kara at the health department. And we have to evaluate this on a case-by-case basis, depending on the situation. If it involves someone, a classroom that's been in a cohort, we will have to determine whether we have to close 1 classroom, 2 classrooms, or an entire building. Sometimes we may have to close for what we call presumptive for 2 to 5 days so that we can do a proper contact tracing. And as I said, it would be on a case-by-case basis.
So the closure would go how? Just the board hears how long? The closure.
The closure, well, if it's once we determine the positive case and say we determine it's a cohort of just 1 classroom, then those students, everyone would be sent home to quarantine for 14 days and to be COVID tested.
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Gladys, there's a question.
I had to mute. I unmute myself.
I just have a quick question for Kathy or Kara. I'm just trying to get an idea of how we're having the course of events influence what we're doing and what's going around us. Today, New Milford schools are closed for the next 2 days because they had a positive COVID test. Newtown Public Schools is a positive COVID test. Now, mind-bogglingly, they won't say whether it's a student or a staff member, and it doesn't appear that they've closed anything. Naugatuck High School is closed because of a positive COVID test with a student. So obviously we did the right thing by not opening because the dominoes are falling and they've been open less than a week. How are we taking what those experiences that other districts are having, and how are we going to use that to influence what we're doing in decision making going forward?
So we will be following Addendum 5, which was presented several weeks ago at the board meeting. We have the scenarios from the state on how to respond if someone tests positive, how we would respond in terms of closing. We have, if a student presents with symptoms, we have criteria for how they're assessed, who goes to the isolation room, who gets sent home, what the response is if they test negative or positive. And again, it's on a case-by-case basis because it may differ. For example, at the secondary level, where students, once we're back in the building, they're not as cohorted as in the elementary schools. It's just not possible with their schedule. So depending on the contact tracing, we may have to close the entire high school versus just 1 or 2 classes.
I think I asked the question badly. We're going to be doing going forward, analyzing and deciding at some point in the next few weeks whether we're coming back in. To what degree are we using?
So let me try to answer. Let me try to answer that. That's not a. Yeah, I will tell the board right now. I was contacted yesterday by the commissioner, who was asked by the governor, "What is Danbury doing in terms of returning?" So the question to me was, "What are you doing?" And what we're going to do is follow the law, which is to look at the data, just as we did with the athletics, and to make an informed decision regarding our situation, which has been distinctly different than the surrounding towns. I don't know much that I could take away to say what happened in Newtown would necessarily impact us. What I can say that we will be impacted what's happening in Danbury relative to our data, which would help us to make a healthy decision. That's the best way I can approach that. And what I told the state is, in conversation with Kara and Kathy, we are going to wait the 2 weeks. We're particularly concerned regarding the Labor Day and what it may bring. And at that point, meet with our 2 medical advisors and the whole team, as we did when we went down, when we decided to go DL to make a decision. Kara Prunty, any advice to us on that scale to bring us some other perspective?
Yeah, I think that right now everything is data for us to collect. So that's the advantage that we have right now, is that we can watch and assess how the community spread is happening and how other schools are handling these situations. We can see, if their mitigation plans and their plans are working. There's a couple of things that are happening that we want to watch. One is the Labor Day, one is the other schools reopening the private schools, and also the fact that WestCon is coming back. So those are some things that we want to watch very closely and monitor, and that will all kind of impact how our metrics are going, and then see where we are in a few weeks.
I don't know if that answers it, Joe, but that's about the best.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Carrie had everything I was talking about.
And Kara is very detailed. Whenever she has the data available, so we can look at the metrics, whether it's a low, moderate, or high risk, based on the positivity of cases.
Yeah, much as we did with the athletics, which that we reviewed. So, okay.
Apologies, I think Al Russo had a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick comment or question for Mrs. Prunty. The metrics and the data in Danbury.
Al, we're getting every third word.
We're doing what we're doing. We have done
A lot of
the right thing. and if we'll continue to do the right thing. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Russo. I think that
Let's
question
try
is,
it again.
I couldn't hear what you were
My
saying.
internet connection is unstable.
Al, maybe you could type it into the chat.
Do the metrics in Danbury, the numbers in Danbury now still support distance learning?
Couldn't.
I
can't.
I'm going to repeat back what I think the question was. Do the metrics still support distance learning? Was that the question? Yes. Okay.
Sure. Too long.
I'm not sure what you were saying. I also might not have a good connection.
We're not receiving the information, the question clearly, and we can't, answer it. We can't hear it. I don't know if anyone else can hear it clearly.
I think Dr. Sal may be trying to call him.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get through. I can't, unless he wants to write it in the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Cooper, I've got a question.
Excuse me, Mr. Janella, do you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
To Kim. Kim, you mentioned that on the new hires, that this year is 130.
And I can't hear him either.
No.
Can't hear the question.
To Kim, you had mentioned this year's on the new hires was 113, and it was down from last year of about 160. Are we budgeted for that higher number?
Try one last time.
No.
I believe our numbers.
Yeah.
I believe our numbers support that.
I heard the question. The question was, if we're down, essentially it was if we're down 50 people, are we budgeted for 163 or 113? We're budgeted for the 113. We're budgeted for the lower number. So these people that we're hiring are primarily backfilled positions, with the simple exceptions of those student support specialists that we brought on this year. But other than those, they're all vacancies that were created by departures. So we're literally plugging holes, if that makes sense.
Yep. So the shortfall is not going to create a problem.
Right. Correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry. Mr. Kronsky, I believe our numbers will continue. Our COVID positive will still continue to support.
Gladys, we're having trouble with Al's unless he puts it in the chat.
Okay.
I don't see it in the chat.
Mr. Janella asked a question, and could Kim, because I can't understand what the question was.
Yep. So
go ahead.
I understood. So I had made a comment earlier that to give perspective that we hired 113 teachers this year, and last year at this time we had done 163.
Right.
And his question was, were there budget implications for that because the lower number? And my answer to that is no. We had budgeted for the teachers that we've hired this year, and they are almost exclusively replacing people who've left. So last year we had more people leave and had to fill the gaps. This year we've had fewer vacancies, and we have not brought on volumes of new positions. We haven't created a lot of new positions. So we've remained fairly static. So we're plugging the holes, basically, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Mr. Russo posted his question in the chat.
Okay, I believe our number supports continued distance learning. Am I correct? Kara. I'm going to say yes, but right now we're moving them up. Kara, Prunty?
Yes, that's a good question.
Go ahead.
So there's a couple of things that go into our numbers that would make us decide whether we go distance learning or hybrid. One of those things is trending. And so we have to kind of wait until we can establish a trend. And so since we had our outbreak, I would say that we've now stabilized. we would want to see more of a downward consistent trend. So right now, I would say that we would still support distance learning at this time.
Thank you, Kara.
Is my audio back? Thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Al. Are there any other questions?
Go ahead,
question.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dan. Kim, I think this one goes to you. You mentioned there were a number of paras and tutors that were not returning. Do you have a fix on that number or like a rough amount?
I don't know whether Kelly has, it feels like tidal waves because they're all coming at once, but I would say it's probably, right now we're looking to see whether we have failed to pick anybody up with the new opening of school, because remember, everybody's distance working.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's probably about a dozen. Kelly, I don't know if you want to chime in anymore. It's probably about a dozen so far.
And we've had a few more this week, Kim. So I would say we're up a little over 15 now. So, but we have sufficient support in this distance learning environment, and we'll look to bring additional people on board. When we come back in person. The other thing we've done is assume some other roles and responsibilities into support within the paraprofessional union or unit, such as our ISS paras who are not needed in this environment, and we've pushed them into support. So it's made up for some of the openings that we've had. So I think we've effectively utilized resources, but we will need to backfill those positions when we return to in-person instruction.
And then I just had a couple other questions. One was about who's in the school buildings and whether or not the teachers are supposed to be in the school buildings right now while we're distance learning, or if that's, Courtney mentioned that was up to their discretion, I think. I just wanted to clarify that point.
So
yes. Go ahead, Kim.
Right now, let me start with non-certified staff because that's clearer. Right now, our nurses, custodians, safety advocates, and secretaries, I think that's all of them, are all working 4 days a week in person in the buildings. Paras and tutors are only going to work at the request of the special ed department to assist with any of the testing or anything like that that's going on. And administrators are also working 4 days a week in their buildings. So teachers have been invited in if they'd like to come. We have some buildings, just anecdotally, I've heard are full with teachers who are teaching from their classrooms with no students. With regard to the remainder, that's a topic for our discussions about the reopening plan with the teachers in negotiations.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then I just have one last question. I will cede the floor. I'm just curious about and maybe Gina, this is a question for you, about the connectivity for those teachers who have been in the building. I know that when we have, all the students in, it's obviously a different connection situation, but with the teachers running their lessons remotely out of the building, are there any issues that are happening with that?
So mostly I haven't heard any, but I don't think that there are a lot of teachers in the buildings. In the middle school and high school, we've had consistent connectivity always. And even when the students were there, we averaged every student had at least 3 devices they were connecting to our network. So if we say that they're connecting one and now everybody's going to connect one, that kind of mimics the connectivity. As far as the elementary schools, we did over the summer push to have Wi-Fi access in every classroom because there were a lot of dead spots in elementary schools. They're older buildings. Wi-Fi doesn't go through concrete.
Right.
A lot of interference, things like that. So currently we are in every building installing Wi-Fi access points in just about every classroom. So we anticipate when they come back that they will also have strong connectivity as we have at the high school and the middle school. And based on the technology and the white papers that Google puts out on resources for classrooms and how much resources it takes, we should be fine with the connectivity. So But as always, we never know until we, get back in there. So
That's a fair
we're ready
point.
to address it if it seems to be more resources than we anticipated.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess just on a follow-up on that, I'm sorry. In terms of like the hybrid model, which I assume is probably what we're going to roll back into when and if we go back in person, if there's like synchronous teaching, so the teacher is in the front of the classroom and they're teaching, and there are kids streaming at home, to that connection, and there might be kids in the classroom who are also connected to Google Classroom. I'm just asking, from a follow-up point, because I do IT at work, and I know when we're talking bandwidth, like what we're talking about here. So I just am, it sounds like you guys are sort of preparing for that eventuality, and you're feeling pretty confident that with that expansion of the network that you'll be able to sustain all that streaming.
That's true. Surprisingly, Google Classroom doesn't take the bandwidth in streaming that, say, like Netflix does.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like Zoom.
It's not high def. It's not high definition. And so, according to Google, and based on what they've given us, we should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
And the checks in the mail? we hope. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions, but I do want to just address that opening comment regarding, the opening of opening the school with the high school teacher. One, it was about the hiring. I think Kim explained how that went, but I would like to tell the board, and I can make this a public statement, that we were somewhat knowledgeable, towards the middle of August. There was some unusual activities going on. This particular individual never had any other issues presented to us. And being that there was no students in school, if someone's in school and something like that occurs, then we place people on leave. In this case, school was on session. So we go through the process, and that's what we started doing. We got to the process where conversation was had, and the decision was made with the follow the law, which in Connecticut, there is the Teacher Dismissal Act that we have to follow due process. And while we started that process, the person in question, Mr. Hanna, decided to resign. So, we don't fire someone that doesn't no longer works with us. So we've made the proper notifications to all of the agencies that needed to know regarding this behavior that we felt was terribly inappropriate, unprofessional, demeaning to our student body and the whole community. And I know the board does not tolerate it, nor do we tolerate any of that. So those are the occurrences of what happened. This is a personnel matter, but I speak to it because it was somewhat public. And then at this point, that individual no longer works for us. There was a very good question in there about what are we doing going forward? And Kevin, I'm going to ask you to spend a few minutes talking about what we've done the last year and what we're doing in terms of the identification of equity and respecting each other's cultural preferences. Can you spend a little time doing that for me, Kevin?
Sure. So one, as I'm hearing the parent express her concerns and then share those questions for us as a school community, I couldn't help but think about some of the work that we talked about last year, and this is our work about Portrait of the Graduate, and I recall being in engagement sessions where we've asked two questions to engage anyone that's been in front of us, and many people who are watching or listening this evening probably also recall seeing these two questions in our various surveys. And the Portrait of the Graduate questions: what are the hopes, aspirations, and dreams that our community has for our young people? And what are the skills and mindsets that our children need for success in this rapidly changing and complex world? And one of the competencies that continue to resonate with all of the groups that we met with was this idea of civic engagement. And frankly, I think the concerns that the parents shared is a reminder that we as a school community have space for growth in this area. Given the social climate in our country and the numerous examples of racism and social injustice, we have been planning to move forward with our commitment to lead explicit conversations about racial and social injustice, as well as opportunities to take on issues that impact gender and gender identity and more. Some folks on this call probably aware that through the work of Danbury Works, the town and our city has already been involved and engaged in dialogue about social injustice. In Danbury Public Schools, we started conversations with our admin council last school year, at the end of the 18-19 school year, and then had some initial discussions and began discussions with administrative group, and then talked about responsibilities of our coaches and literacy coaches and folks who impact curriculum. And so this work was starting to, get deeper into the organization. And then of course we had the shutdown, and some of the planning that we had to continue this work was, we had to put a pause on these things. But we acknowledge that it's time to engage our students, more explicitly, engage our staff more explicitly, and then continue and deepen the conversation with our administrators in this work. I think, what happened recently is a stark reminder for all of us that if we're going to, graduate students who are civically engaged, that we need to be more intentional about socially what's going on in our country and right here in our own community. And so, I know we've had various discussions about how this can be embedded, throughout our curriculum, how it could be embedded, during our time in the mornings, or times of day that we've carved out for social emotional. And first we need to get in front of our teachers and have intentional conversations about these things so they can lead conversations with their kids in a safe space.
Kevin, want to mention the upcoming meeting we're having?
Yes, I'm sorry, Sal, which one?
With the NAACP. Do we have that scheduled?
Yes, well, the NAACP has invited us to talk about, number one, our reopening plan, but I anticipate also conversations about what we're talking about right now as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to make that public. I thought it was important. So in closing, I'm extremely proud of our folks. I thank you for the letter that you wrote 2 weeks ago, acknowledging that work. Opening it face to face is one thing, but opening it the way we have had to open it, learning as we go through, has just been incredible. And this team with Kara, Kevin, Kelly, and Courtney, Rich Jalbert, and Kathy and Kara Prunty, it's really been a team effort with the town. So I'm very, very proud of them. If anybody has any questions, I know I see emails going to board members, and just forward them to me. And we try to get to those parents and, talk them through some of these issues. With that, I think I'm through, Gladys.
Okay. Any board members have any last minute questions?
Gladys, I do.
Yes, Rachel.
I apologize. I had my own connectivity issues for about 10 minutes there during this meeting. So if this was already mentioned, just let me know and I'll rewatch what I missed. Can we talk about instruction for a little bit? What I'm hearing about already on day 2, as far as hours, is that it's not enough, particularly at the high school level. And can you just briefly talk about how that time is so different from the other 2 models, the hybrid and the in-person, and that it shouldn't really mirror, a full distance learning program. Already my 2 kids are sitting at the computer for 4 hours nonstop, and I can see their eyes blinking. It's appropriate for them.
Yeah. I'm sorry. No, yeah. And that's, it's interesting because the feedback right now, it's, why aren't we in a full 6-hour, 7-hour day? What is it that we're doing? And then, a few minutes later, we'll get an email that says that this is too much screen time, even just the time that we have. So, it's really, it runs the gamut of opinion, and, both it's personal and it's, it's very, we've done our best to create a balanced program that we think serves the best interests of kids. And in a distance learning program, and I know some people like to compare us to surrounding towns. We didn't compare ourselves to surrounding towns in the spring. We had to do what was best for Danbury, and I thought that we did a pretty good job in the spring of meeting the needs of our kids to the best of our abilities, and we're doing that now as well. So 6.5 hours of screen time is not good for students. When you're doing a good blended learning program, so we're not trying to replicate the traditional school day, we're trying to actually create a blended learning program that will also serve us in the future as well. And that means that there's a combination of both synchronous and asynchronous work. And the asynchronous piece is a level of flexibility that we provide students time and space to perform similar work, but at a place, particularly with the older students, that they're able to do so independently. So what is it that has to be done in an in-person live interactive capacity, and what is best served offline and asynchronous? We're also trying to do work in something called flipped classroom, where there is learning targets, instructional modeling, and guided practice that's combined in a flipped experience. So once students start to log into some of their Edgenuity programs, they'll have some independent practice and independent work in an asynchronous fashion that mirrors and supports some of the synchronous work that they're doing as well. And so that makes up really a full and complete instructional day, and probably then some, right? And so here we are, we're not even quite as into the how long we've been sitting in this meeting, and your eyes are already tired and dry. And for many on this call, we've been in Zoom meetings all day. So you can imagine what our 6th grader or 7th grader is experiencing as well. They need to get up, they need to move. The things that we normally do in a classroom when we assign student independent work in a classroom while the teacher's working with other students, we can do that asynchronously offline, and we allow students to choose time and space and when to do that. And again, it's far more suited for the older students, which is why you see a little bit of a discrepancy in the schedules. And once the academic stuff starts to kick in, those asynchronous times and those flex times will be well utilized. But yeah, at the same time, we're also able to offer some support to students who really need that additional one-on-one. We actually free that space and that time up for students to be able to do both, but it's flexible. And that's the key to a good blended learning program, is that there's flexibility in there, and there's some student autonomy in the choice and time and space with which they complete some of the independent work that they're assigned.
That's great. And we've only just begun.
And we have only just begun. And, we will be continuing to evaluate how the scheduling impacts what these student outcomes are. So if we're not liking what we're seeing, we will take that into consideration, and we'll make timely adjustments as necessary.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any other questions? Okay. We can move on down the agenda. You're complete, Dr. Sam? You finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is we had a discussion. I don't think we've taken care of that. We don't have any information package, I don't think. Okay, the board chairperson report quickly. On Tuesday, the 15th, we have a board workshop. The information was sent out to you at least 2 weeks to give you the opportunity to look at your schedule. And please, I would like 100% participation at this board workshop. So please try to make the workshop on the 15th, which is next Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
Gladys, sorry to interrupt. Is that going to be virtual or in person?
It's going to be virtual.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank all the board members for your continued support for communication, outreach, letting parents and the community hear what was going on within the school system in the month of July and August. I know that some of us could have been doing other things except, saying, let's make sure that the community know what we're doing. And I want to thank you for your support in the month of July and August. There's a couple other things I'm going to make sure that we discuss this at our workshop next week. I'm not going to get into that because we've had a lengthy meeting. My last thing will be elected officials coming to or being a part of our Zoom meeting. The procedure is, and I'm going to say this, and we'll talk about this later. If an elected official, could be common council person, would like to be a part of our meeting, we're going to ask board members, you are not to give out the Zoom information. You've had communication concerning that. And we're going to ask council members not to go through another board member to get your name or get on the Zoom meeting tonight. Please call Superintendent Secretary and ask her to make sure that you be on the meeting when we have a board meeting. Let's just do and respect one another and do what's right. We're gonna have the Superintendent Secretary set you up and make sure that you can be in our meeting, okay? That's about all that I have. The other little dirty house cleaning we'll do next week. Okay. One thing.
Gladys, one thing as you retreat next week, and I just bring it up, and my goals for this year, I haven't set them. If you guys could talk next Tuesday about those areas that you'd like me to focus in. This has been a very unusual opening in a year for me, so I would appreciate that. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Sayre. And my last comment, and I made a statement, and I think I had a discussion with a member last week. My impression was all council members were getting the invitation concerning our meeting. My understanding is the communication goes to the mayor. And I was always under the impression that it went to every council member. So, we really have to tighten up some things, work together, and respect one another. So, from my understanding, now it would be Carol to get you set up to be on our Zoom meeting. If there's no other questions or no other discussion, I entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
A motion made by Joe, seconded by?
Seconded
by?
Kate.
Kate, I need to see you guys' faces so I know who's making these motions. Motion so carried. It's 9:02. Do we need a break?